going to be here giving a market talk. He just got back from China, and I don't think anybody has a better idea of what fur prices are today than Mr. Grunwald. So
we're going to do this in a little different form than we typically do these talks. Typically I just get up here and talk, but Kent has graciously agreed to kind of do this in a sort of an interview fashion. So he'll just be asking me questions, and everybody is free to jump in with a question, but he'll kind of be the moderator as we go, and I'll just be answering his questions. So I already kind of have the list of questions, but he'll be adding some stuff as we go, and you guys are, and not only can you, but you're also encouraged to think about and ask questions as I go. So I want to give a talk that's interesting to you guys. Okay.
one of the things that's changed radically over the last couple of years is the ranch mink industry, and I'm curious, what kind of shape is it in today?
Well, I'll ask you guys a question to start then. How many mink do you think were produced, ranch mink were produced in the entire world, let's just say 7 years ago? Everybody probably recognizes that as the last time we saw high wild fur prices. How many mink do you think were produced?
120 million.
Have you listened to some of my other talks?
I just read a lot.
That's a very good guess. Some people would say that's right on. The absolute peak estimates are 150 million. That's assuming maybe China produced close to 80 or 90 million mink. It seems a little maybe a bit of a stretch, but somewhere right in that 120 million. Does anybody want to guess how many are going to be produced this year, or could be killed here in about a month?
Last I heard was like 30, 40 million.
That's also a very good guess, because that's just about spot on. Somewhere 26, 27, 28 million in the West. In other words, Western Europe, Poland, and the United States, and somewhere less than 10 million. Most of those mink ranchers in China have gotten out of the business. It's a much cheaper mink than we have, and even now the last remnants of that business are they're knocking the centers of the cages out, or the separations between two cages, and putting box in there. So the mink business has just, it's unbelievable how fast it has shrunk. And we are estimating that somewhere around 30% of the ranchers will pelt out again, or just reduce females. In other words, reduce breeding stock for this coming season. So we're going to lose another 30% or so coming this fall. And I was just in Yuyao. A week ago I was in China. My last day I was in Yuyao. Yuyao is the center of the mink business today. And it has the prices have come down, obviously considerably in the past 6 years. If you bought mink in February, which is the start of the mink selling season, and this is sort of the middle of the mink selling season as far as they're concerned, when they start to sell, because the manufacturers are really buying. If you had bought in February at the start when ranchers start to sell, and sold now, which is sort of a traditional time to sell, you would have lost money the last 6 years. This would be the first year that you could have actually made money. In other words, the price throughout the season has kind of remained stable and actually increased just a little bit. So from that perspective, it's great. It's still at a level that, as I said, they're probably going to lose another 20-30% of the mink farmers, or of the breeding stock, and that's because it's so cheap. So we're still at a level in the mink business where it's below production costs, but it has stabilized, and it's starting to increase. So from that perspective, it is a positive development in the mink business.
We all trap wild fur. Why do we really care about what's happening in the ranch mink?
Well, obviously, if you trapped a wild mink, you would care, because it's an absolute direct competitor. It's a much smaller item, but you can never, at this point in time, you cannot sell a wild mink for more than you sell a ranch mink. But the other thing is all of these items directly compete with garments in China, or around the world for that matter. But for the most part, they directly compete. So you don't think of, obviously a mink and a mink is two things that are very comparable. But even a raccoon, they're using raccoons as like bellies and stuff to line coats today. Okay, that's a direct competitor to a cheaper ranch mink. Okay, even though they're much different in their look, all of these items are interchangeable. If that ranch mink coat, that traditional ranch mink coat, is selling for 2,000 RMB, it's very, very difficult still, even though it's lost some of its luster, and it's still very difficult inside the sales or of course Coyote, because it's using the trim to sell that garment for more money than better management. So everything is competing against that. And that's where the real, I mean, at 6 years ago, 7 years ago, when we were at the height, a mink coat in China was, $8,000, and now it's, $1,000. Well, it's you can see how much more difficult it would be to sell a beaver coat for, $1,000.
Do we need ranch for the industry to work right?
Well, I would say yes, we do, because if we did, at this particular time, and if we didn't have a mink business, there would really be no business. I mean, the numbers, I said they came down from 150 million to or 120 million, whatever you want to take that number as, down to 30-some million. But if you look at wild fur numbers and take rabbits out of the equation as far as numbers, we're looking at 1 million. Raccoon production. I think I talked about that last year if you were here. I mean, it's in the United States from 2.5 million 7 years ago to 250,000 or something like that this past season. There would be nobody for me to go over and see in China. You wouldn't even be able to find the fur business because it would be so small. I mean, I'd like to think, if it was gone, the wild fur could just explode, and we could produce, 5 million muskrats and 4 million raccoon, and we'd actually have a business. But at this point, it does sort of help us in that it has infrastructure, dressing companies, places to process, and places to sell our garments. Okay.
You were just in China. You touched on that.
We're going to face the camera a little bit this way because she's recording. Go ahead.
You were just in China, and you touched on that a little bit.
Yeah.
How are things in China? I mean, China buys a tremendous amount of our fur.
Well, there's two problems in China, and one is because of the trade dispute, the economy is poor there. Okay, so that has really hindered their purchasing power. Apartment buildings or apartments are still very expensive, and the working class people have very little money to spend. Okay, because they spend it all on housing, and the economy is not, wages are not going up like they were 5 or 6 years ago, and they just don't have the discretionary income. And the second thing is, as far as actual fur business, what hurt us is when the Russians kind of fell out of the fur business, they were taking all of these, the 50 million mink that were 60 million mink that were being produced in China, those were going to Russia. They were making commercial coats, they were going to Russia. And those came to China, and they made coats out of them, and all of a sudden, instead of selling, the really nice mink coats in China, they were selling the cheap mink coats in China. And it took the glamour out of it. In other words, the lady saw her maid with the coat and the traditional story, and she didn't want a fur coat anymore. So that's the two problems. And we'll talk about this. I don't know where it'll work in, but there is the parka, the coyote trim parka, but they're trimming it. Anybody see my video in China a week ago? A couple guys. They're not just using coyotes for these parkas, and these parkas don't just look like the traditional parka you would think. With just the rough on them. They're lining them in fur. They're trimming the cuffs in fur. They're lining them with strange items like raccoon, which is really positive. So from that perspective, we're seeing sort of a little bit of a rebirth there. Okay, I mean, I've told this story 100 times since I've been back to China, but you can find classic mink coat, full length, okay, for 600, actually less, even as low as $300. Some very commercial mink, but let's just say $300 to $600. There's parkas that have 3 mink in them, okay, that are super high style, and they're $1,000. So it shows you, if you've got some style, you can get, you can fetch a decent price for your garment. But when you're just competing on price, it is so difficult because when they make these garments, the only thing they have, if they're worried about price, the only thing they can negotiate on that coat is what? They have all these inputs into, you know, liners and buttons. And fur, what's the only thing they can negotiate on? Is fur. You know, the other stuff is just a price. You just go buy it. But if it's, you know, they're really trying, you know, to sell based on price, the only thing they can cut is the cost of fur. So that makes it very difficult for us.
You know, I've been reading about the fur industry all my life, and if you guys have not gone to Grunwald Fur and Wool's Facebook page and watched these videos on China, you're really missing out, because I've never seen anything like this. It's an aspect of the fur market that I don't think anybody's ever shown before. It's really interesting.
It's unbelievable how big it is. I mean, I was in, you know, Xinji, Yuyao, Cancun, and you know, you think that all the fur in the world must be in each one of these cities because there's that much fur you see. I mean, massive building after massive building, you know, using fur.
Half a mile long, building half a mile long.
Oh yeah, and lots of them, you know. Yeah, it's just unbelievable still the amount of fur that they use.
Well, here's the big question all of us here in Central Illinois. What's going to happen with raccoon prices this year?
Okay, so raccoon prices, I just touched on this a little bit, and I said that when you go to your customer, they say, well, actually my biggest raccoon customer that is a manufacturer, not my biggest raccoon customer, my biggest one that's a manufacturer. I've sold him for 5 years, 6 years, get along great, go to see him last week in China, and you know, I can see that, hey, they're using more raccoon, more people are using them. And I was like, you know, wow, you know, it's going to be easy to move the price up on this guy. And he says to me, yeah, I'm going to have to be a little cheaper on these raccoons because other people are using them and they're competing with me, you know. And I was so disappointed, but that only lasts for so long. I mean, raccoon stocks, I would say, in this country or in North America are starting to get depleted. You know, a couple years ago, you know, they were at, you know, 2 years ago, I would say there were still 2 million raccoon, you know, in the United States. Today, I'd say it's somewhere around 500,000, maybe 600,000. The hard one to know is how many raccoon are laying around China. And I'd go to customers and they'd say, "Oh yeah, I just bought for $7 some dressed raccoon. They were 4 years old. Yeah, obviously, somebody bought them. You know, maybe at a high price, dressed them, couldn't sell them, and maybe they're in some other business. They just got, yeah, $7, boom. So there is, like I said, there is price pressure on the garments. There is price pressure because other people are coming in and selling these parkas. And you know, the one way you sell something in China is just sell it cheap, you know. But as they begin to run out of this product, you know, as the stocks are depleting here, and as it becomes depleted over there, for instance, in the rabbits, you know, rabbits. If you think you guys were in trouble with the wild fur, I mean, the rabbit business in, you know, 10 years ago began this trajectory like this, and they went from, you know, 20 cents to $2, and you know, this is container loads from Europe, you know, where they use them for meat, and they would just sell these frozen rabbits to China for liners, and I mean, this business was crazy, and it went to zero. I mean, these people were throwing them away, you know, they're just throwing them in the garbage, and the processors from Europe, and in the last 3 months, they've gone from 3 RMB to 7. You know, it's a huge move. You know, I mean, money-wise, maybe it's not a lot, but they've doubled. So at some point, you know, these rabbits, they ran out, and they're using them for liners. If you saw the video, you know, they're making them even look like muskrats. So they ran out, and there was millions of rabbits. There was people that had frozen these containers, and so they must have gone through those rabbits, or even they had them dressed and they were laying around. They had to have gone through them. That's the only way the price can go up. So they can be hard as they want on price, but at some point, when the product really starts to, the supply really starts to tighten up, and they're using it, not just supplies tighten up. Supply tightening up doesn't do anything, but they got to be using it. So
You were pretty aggressive buying raccoon last year, and you're even apparently going to be more aggressive at buying this year. What do you think the price is going to open at?
You know, we've got a ton of sections probably represented here. You know, when we go to the north, you know, certainly, you know, a 5X, you know, will be a $20 basis, you know, in the Greeks. You know, but that's a 5X. That's a huge raccoon. That's a heavy raccoon. When you start to get into the semi-heavy sections, you know, it's when you start to take off some of the costs associated with it, it's still going to be a little difficult for a trapper to really see, you know, a lot of gains, you know. But, you know, certainly some $12 raccoon in the semi-heavy sections in the Greece, you know, will be possible.
These guys, you probably represent 3 main sections here. There'll be some southern fin,
Sure.
and there'll be like a north central, and and then some northern. Take the north central, the one in the middle. What,
Oh,
what
I
do you
mean,
think they'll average?
that's also another, it's
If-
difficult too, because
if-
some guys, they start a little bit later when they're really
Exactly,
prime. and
exactly.
Maybe they cull their catch a little bit, you know, they get rid of some of the small sizes. Although small sizes are very much in demand, of course, the price is reflected.
The
but-
largest all sold last year.
Yeah, sure, the small sizes are gone. You know, I think a guy in northern Illinois, northern Iowa could average from 7 to 11. You know, if he's got a nice set of raccoons. Down here, you know, he won't be able to achieve those prices
So-
in this area.
So you tell people to go after raccoon.
Yeah, we certainly would tell people to go after raccoon. I mean, you know, you look at Illinois, I mean, there's almost, in Iowa, two main states for us, they're almost devoid of a muskrat. You know, a lot of guys have a difficult time trapping coyotes after it freezes, after the weather gets bad. So, you know, if you want to be a trapper, you almost have to be a raccoon trapper in this, you know, area. You know, coyotes and raccoon is what I should tell you to go after, because that's the two items that there is something about. And there is a fantastic price on coyotes. Raccoon prices, you know, with a possibility of getting a little stronger, you know, on the raccoons. If they start off having a nice selling season, I talked to China this morning on the way down here, and they were having, you know, this is the first day after the National Day. October 1st, they completely closed for like 4 days. So this was sort of the first half day back, and my customer had a fantastic day in China today. So it's, you know, it looks, you know, like, and then that was on Mink, but it all ties together. So it looks like I'm a little more positive today giving this talk than I would have been yesterday, to tell you the truth.
You know, you said a few years ago, and I kind of remembered this, that the first doubling of the prices of hard.
Right.
The second or third, it's really tough.
Yeah.
But I think everybody here would be pretty happy with that first doubling.
Well, we already have had a first doubling. That's
From $3 to $6.
we did have a $3 to $6 double, so that already actually has happened. So the next one is, you know,
Gonna
a
be
bit.
tough.
We've just stabilized. You know, muskrats, they definitely doubled 3 years ago. They were $1.50. They went to $3. You know, now we've, you know, to go to $4, you know, was another couple of years. So yeah, that next is a little more difficult.
Do you see all of the raccoon? A few years ago, we produced raccoon and they didn't sell, or they were being bought by people speculating. You see all the fresh raccoon moving right into the
Well,
market.
more. I mean, we used up more than the fresh crop this
Right,
year, certainly.
right.
And the crop this year, I would assume will actually maybe be a little bit less than last year. That's my assumption right now, from some stuff I've heard. So, I mean, I think last year's was up a little bit over the year before, and this next year might be down a little bit. But there will be, unless something really tragic happens in China, there is very little chance that we won't use up at least everything that you produce fresh this year.
Guy and I, this next thing I want to talk about, Guy and I have done round and round on this, and he beats me up on it all the time. But the market's changing in how they want their fur put in. So I'd like to talk a little bit about wire versus wood.
Well, I think when you talk about wire and wood, it's more than just wire and wood, and it's time you spend putting your animals up. Okay, that's really what this argument represents. And you know, when I go to China, you know, no customer of mine comes up to me and says, you know, hey guy, I really want our muskrats on wood this year. No one. You know, and in fact, if they knew how much it cost to put them on wood, and I told them I was going to switch to wood, they would laugh at me. They would say, why are you using high cost labor to put stuff, you know, and take more time on it? It's just unnecessary. It does nothing for the final product. You know, we are really advocating this year, because like Ken said, that second doubling takes a long time. You know, muskrats, you know, they've been in a pattern of $4 for 3 years. You know, this is the pattern we're at. How are we going to continue to make trapping attractive? And it's how can we process that rat as cheap as possible? So you go out and catch a rat, and just a little bit of effort, and you've got a stretched rat, or just a little bit of effort, and you've got either a green coon or a stretch coon, and you can sell it. Okay. No manufacturer looks at these raccoons before they're dressed. No one. Okay. If they buy them, if a dealer in China buys them from me and then sells them to a manufacturer, the dealer doesn't even look at them in that place. No one looks at them until after they're dressed. So this notion that, you know, we've got to, you know, take all this time and board stretch this stuff and make it look like something it isn't, it is, I feel like is a detriment to the fur business, because what it does to me is it says somebody goes, a novice comes to a trapping convention and watches someone put up a muskrat as a demo, and you know, they put it on boards and push pin it, and the guy raises his hand at the end of the demo and says, well, how much do those typically bring? And you know, because it just took the guy 30 minutes to, as a professional, to do it, and he says, well, like, you know, $4, and the guy's like, well, I'm not going to trap muskrats. You know, why would you spend, you know, half an hour a muskrat, you know, and that's unnecessary. But of course, that guy doesn't know it's unnecessary. He sees a professional saying, this is what we've got to do. And so the reason that we're so adamant now, how we've kind of switched, we've sort of just before, we're like, you know, whatever you want to do, but because we see it as killing trapping. We see it as a detriment to many novice trappers. They get into trapping, they think, wow, I did that as a kid, I'm going to kick my kid out there and do that. And they say, oh, you got to stretch and dry it, and you got to fiddle with it for 3 hours to present it to sell. And it turns off trappers. They trap for 2 years. They're like, I love the trapping, but I hate all this, you know, ridiculous processing. And in fact, to the person that actually buys it, it is ridiculous.
Well, you know, back before the big crash.
Am I getting too passionate here? Or? All right.
Back before the big crash in the 80s, you know, I put raccoon and muskrats on wire because that's what they wanted. But after the crash, it seems with the rise of NAPA and fur harvesters, the Canadian auctions wanted that stuff on wood. So we moved to putting muskrat and raccoon on wood, and I gotta say they look pretty. You know, those nice pleated tails on the mink.
But it does nothing for the final
it
consumer.
adds no value
It
at all.
adds no true value. And I mean, I guess if you want to, you know, if you bring that up, I'll just say that, you know, if you have a representative from one of those auctions saying, yeah, this is a way to make this double into a triple, that's like saying, well, if you do this, you can fool a grader at my company. What does that prove? If it proves the grader doesn't know what he's doing. That's all it proves. I don't understand. And like I said, I mean, I think that, you know, you can see the attendance at most of these trappers conventions in town. You see the turnover, how trappers come in, even with these low prices. I think they would trap if we showed them, hey, you don't have to do crazy things to sell your fur. There's a big turnover. You talk to trapper supply places, they'll all tell you there's 3 years for a trapper. He buys his supplies, he uses his supplies, and it's done. And you know, it's fun to trap, but you know, we can't make it. And you know, and if you love to do all the pleating and stuff, you know, there's stuff that I do. You know, I'm a bow hunter, and I do maybe some crazy stuff. You know, plant some ridiculous things in my food plots, and you know, there's no way that I give away most of my venison anyway. That it pays. So, but that provides a lot of fun for me and enjoyment. So I'm not saying don't do that, and I'm not, you know, but I'm just saying we don't want to, you know, tell young trappers, or I like to say novices, because these trappers a lot of them don't come in as kids. They come in as 25-year-olds, 30-year-olds. We don't want to tell them that, hey, this is what you got to do.
All right, the other $64,000 question in Illinois is coyote.
Coyote market will be extremely strong. Very, very good. At least as good as last year. The parkas are still very much in style in China, and of course in North America too, but around the world. But in China, it's fantastically, and like, if you saw that video, these few guys, I went through that whole mall. That whole floor is all parkas. You know, half mile by a half mile. Okay, indoors. You know, there was 3 floors: fur coats on the, you know, conventional mink coats, kind of parkas, and then like hats and stuff on the bottom. And that whole floor is parkas. I never saw a coyote. You know, and that's because they can't get them. You know, there's just not enough. I mean, if you want to make parkas and you're in China, unless you're charging $1,000 for your garment, and a lot of those, I don't know. I even said how much one of those parkas. You know, it's $200-300 for these raccoon parkas, and they're just, you know, that's not a price point that that store was at. So there's lots of. I saw 12 coyotes the whole time I was in China. I mean, I'm sure I saw, you know, 1 million mink. You know, I mean, I saw so much fur there. I saw 12 coyotes in one person's dealer. It's a very good item, and it'll be a very good. I think it could be a good item for a couple of years. Yeah.
You know, 5-6 years ago, before the coyote market really took off, you know, I got a coyote that was, you know, had a rub spot on the back, or you know, was a little weak in the flanks or whatever, and they didn't. You know, everybody was telling me don't even bother putting it out because it's not worth selling. Well, I put up a coyote last year because the market was so strong that 5 or 6 years ago, I probably would have left it in a ditch, and I got $20 for that coyote.
Okay, so I would say you put up almost everything. Those bad rub on the back, you have to realize Ken is putting up his coyotes. He's not selling it in the carcass. There's a lot of money at my place spent to take that from a carcass, to a stretch and dry animal. So if he got $20 for it, I'm certainly going to have 10, 12, if you sell me a skin or a carcass coyote. So if you're selling them in the carcass, it doesn't hurt to bring it to town or whatever and present it. If it's worthless, it's worthless. But if you're stretching and drying it, it definitely is going to have some value, unless if it's got the shoulders all gone and it's rubbed on the rumps too. Well, I mean, there's no strips left in that. I mean, we threw away coyotes at our factory last year. Not the ones we bought, but guys, just they're worthless, and we say, well, we'll just throw them in the back. So we, even as us, that we would think we would get top market for them, we still throw away some coyotes. There are worthless coyotes, let me tell you. But yeah,
But not as many as there used to be.
No, absolutely not. Err on the side of maybe putting something up now that you wouldn't have before. Okay.
Beaver. There were probably 2,000 beaver caught in Illinois last year, which is probably about as historical low as I can remember.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. 50,000. I think there was 50,000 beaver probably produced in the whole United States last year. I think we bought 60,000. So the beaver production is really low, but the hatter market is where they all go, and we'll still see similar prices as to last year. Plus, you can sell the castor. Castor's worth definitely is almost as much as a beaver is.
It's as high, Castor's as high, I think, as it's ever been.
As it's ever been. So yeah, so the castor market is good, and if the mink price goes up, we say it's competing with ranch mink. The mink price would have to do another double, and maybe another double before beaver prices would be advantageous to sell and for garments and not just for hatter. Yeah, it's difficult.
We got a lot of beaver.
Yeah, they're very expensive to process and for tanning. There's plenty of tanning, there's plenty of room to tan them, but it just costs a lot of money.
What about everything else? Otter, red fox?
Otter market was actually a bit stronger last year. I've got some otter there right now. It's a little early to tell. I've got a couple thousand there right now, and before the year, I'd like to see those sold. I'd hope to be able to pay what we did last year. We were actually very aggressive on otter. Biggest year we've had an otter in 10 years, probably.
Really?
Yeah.
And there was a little bit more glimmerings, I guess, in the red fox market.
Red fox is the worst item.
Really?
It is a very bad item. The reason it's such a bad item is because most of the red fox you catch, even in the north today, are very, very short. It's not a heavy, it's not a semi-heavy, it's a flat, and it's very difficult to trim with them. And what happens if you line a coat, because they'll line a coat with anything. What happens if you line a coat with red fox?
Wears out.
It wears out, and if this guy's got a black coat on, if you have black on and you've got red fox hairs all over you, it's just raccoon will wear perfectly. You can that'll last forever. So yeah, it's a very, very difficult. It's almost unsaleable right now. Very, very difficult.
Yeah, and I realize most of the bobcats being caught in Illinois are not going on the market, but what is a bobcat going to bring? Central Illinois bobcat?
25 to 45 bucks, probably. Yeah, the market is decent, but it's decent because they're cheap. Yeah. That is one thing that actually still goes to Russia.
Will we be able to sell wild mink this year?
Sure. I mean, they're cheap. I mean, I'm selling a lot of wild mink right now in China. I bought them all over North America to do it, to have any kind of numbers. But I'm selling tremendous amounts. But you have to sell them relatively cheaper than a ranch mink. So they will be a cheap item, but they'll be sellable. So
we kicked this around a little bit, and I'm a little reluctant to talk about it because there doesn't seem to be a lot of real hardcore information out there. But we've been hearing all sorts of rumors about NAFTA and what the impact that could have on our welfare industry. What's the deal with NAFTA?
Well, I mean, I obviously don't run NAFTA; they're a competitor. But from an industry standpoint, I would say that you hate to lose a big player because it represents to you that it's a difficult industry. And so from that perspective, I think it's, you know, it's very unfortunate. I don't know what'll happen. I mean, obviously, I know all the same rumors that you know, and then some. I think from the trades perspective that maybe trappers don't see, you know, they have, you know, a lot of money tied up there too that they can't access, you know, deposits before they buy, they can't access, and commissions that they're, you know, supposed to be getting from them that were sent by customers. So that makes it difficult for the trade, you know, those brokers and buyers that, you know, rely on that for an income, they can't access that money. So, you know, I'm hoping that, I guess that, you know, they get enough financing that they'll, you know, be able to pay that out. You know, we'll see what happens. But it will be, you know, it's very interesting. I mean, it's
Scary.
Yeah, it is. It's a bit scary.
So if the worst should happen, and half goes under, what happens? Because they take an awful lot of the wild fur. What happens to the
I guess it
wild fur?
probably depends on the item, you know. There's some items that, you know, there would be no difference whatsoever because, you know, they don't take enough, you know, like you just mentioned wild mink, of course, you know, that wouldn't change a bit.
Muskrat.
Muskrat would probably have very little, you know, change. But when you talk about coyotes, obviously that would be a big one, especially westerns and Canadian coyotes, where they do get a big share of those. But they're, you know, the numbers that go through NAFA percentage-wise have been cut in the last probably 6 years. So it wouldn't be maybe as catastrophic as it would have been, you know, 6 or 7 years ago.
So if we're looking at the troubles that NAFA's been having, particularly financially, is there a future in the fur business?
Yeah, I would certainly say there's a future. We're still investing. The China business is still, you know, a massive business. We've gone through a huge restructuring in this industry, and, you know, numbers. You know, we pointed out some of the numbers, how they've fallen. But, you know, I would say that you know, it's unfortunate. You know, what happened in California, you know, this week with outlawed trapping. But you know, I think that there will be, you know, demand, you know, in China going forward, certainly for, you know, this generation, and we'll see how things go beyond that. But I see a glimmer of hope.
Another issue that's coming up that we're going to end up addressing at some point in time is this whole, you know, sustainability, traceability issue that's being pushed, I guess, mainly by the European Union. How's that affecting you? I mean, what do you think? Does it matter?
Okay, I would say that those two, the future and that, are very closely tied, and you really should talk about them together. And the way I look at this is, and it's not just the EU that's pushing it. I mean, you know, the auction houses here as well are pushing it. I mean, I was in Yuyao last week with the second largest buyer in China. Okay, and I said to him, and I had a mink rancher with me, and I said to him, he said to him, you know, what do you think about traceability? Does it matter at all here in China? And he said, absolutely, 100% not. Does not matter whatsoever. Okay, and in the future it might matter some in China. Okay, but as far as we're concerned, right now it matters nothing. And we're selling, basically, at our company, we're selling 100% of our stuff to China. So what that means is all of the traceability, all of the sustainability, money that's being spent by auction houses, by FICA for Information Council, whatever, all that money that's being spent is really, for you guys, is worthless. Okay? And what I think is what puts a future in the fur business is this. I think that we have to change our attitudes completely. I think that, you know, when we think about an environmentalist, we just shudder. We're just like, we don't even want any part of that. What I think we should do is we should become a part of them instead of like having friction. Because when you look at, you know, like who saw the girl at the UN last week? Anybody? Yeah. You know, we all thought, you know, of course, that she was crazy and everything, and of course, you know, but I saw the Aborigines, you know, in Canada. She went to Canada after the United States. They gave her a coat. It did not have fur on it. Okay, but it did, and I don't think it was leather, but it did have like the little fringe, like it was like one of their, you know, yeah, or whatever. It sort of looked like leather, you know, and she took it, you know. But we have to act like we're the Aborigine people, and this product that we make is completely sustainable. It's completely, carbon neutral. Just think if you go kill a beaver, not only do you, kill a beaver and you don't produce any microplastics, you don't, produce any polyester, you don't produce any, whatever, and when you get done with it, it rots in the ground. You've also saved how many trees that sequester carbon. If you're a beaver trapper, you're the most carbon positive, or I guess carbon negative, you'd say, person there possibly is. So, we should look at ourselves as an environmental group, and if they're protesting somewhere, we ought to go out and hang out with them and say, hey, but we heard she's wearing polyester and she's giving this speech, she's terrible. That's what we ought to say. We ought to question her what she's wearing. I know, like we're in the wool business, and anybody would know what Allbirds shoes are? They're just these wool shoes. There's absolutely no style to them whatsoever. They're just the most simple thing in the world. They're rubber soled, but natural rubber and wool. And they're the hottest thing in the world. And I don't know if those sheep are treated any better than any other sheep, and nobody really cares. But they say they're rubber and wool, and you can make rubber and wool forever. And we've trapped beavers forever. We've trapped raccoon forever. They're still here, and they're sustainable. And I think the environmental people, you mentioned the EU. I mean, I was in 2 weeks in Europe. The environmental people are so incredibly passionate that they would sacrifice life to be carbon neutral. Literally sacrifice life. So if we're carbon negative, they should love us. So I think that's the bandwagon, because it's much less costly than trying to become, to where we can trace back, to the trap. I mean, who wants to trace back to this guy when you look at your garment? That's what God, I'm just giving you a hard time. But no, you want to, I don't see where that benefits us cost effectively to go back like that. I say we ought to just become carbon neutral people, and we're the biggest environmentalists. We're the original environmentalists.
It's certainly the greenest part of the fashion industry.
Sure.
That's a tough sell, not just to sell trappers to kind of hang out with these.
Yeah, right.
But the other way around is tough too. Any idea how we ought to approach that?
I think
the NTA has been talking about that a lot on what our message should be.
Well, I mean, I think with I think when you look at social media today, and you look at, I guess other people have heard me say this, but the Indian with the tear commercial, this 30-second, or I think it was a 60-second slot that they did in 1971 or something, started the environmental movement in America. How much does that cost to produce something like that? Nothing. Really. I'm producing a 40-minute, 50-minute video that's going to be really informative for trappers. It cost us, my wife sitting here videoing it. But you could do an informational thing, and show, that hey, these trappers are producing this product, and it biodegrades at the end of this. At the end of its life, and fashion is quick, and these people they buy something, and next year it's out of style and it goes in a garbage dump, and so will this fur, but at least the fur will be gone at some point,
Right.
So that's what I think the future of the fur business is, and I think that we have wasted 20 years of time and money on this silly traceability stuff. This is something that you do when you've already said, hey, my product is green, and then you say, yeah, okay, well, we're making so much money off it, we'll trace it back to the trapper or something like that, and make it even more, appealing to these people.
Shirley, some people got some questions for him.
I have some comments.
Go ahead.
Where do you get off saying that carbon's bad? Carbon is the best thing.
I'm not going to argue. I'm not going to argue that.
And buying into their delusion, I don't think helps us a thing.
But you're never going to fight these people.
Oh yeah, you are. And
Well,
it's coming right up.
Yeah, I think it's very difficult. These people. Facts don't really matter to them. Is the problem?
Well, I agree there, because they're delusional. You can't reason with somebody who's insane.
But the world is delusional today. We just had 1.5 billion people watch a girl, talk about stuff that was I would say delusional. And if we want to sell our product, you know, that,
Well,
we don't have a choice.
I'd say I agree with you that we need to team up wherever we can, but buying into someone's delusion, I can't see as being beneficial down the road.
Well, I mean, the alternative is, you know, there is no fur business. You know, if we continue to be adversarial to the environmental movement, I mean, I'm just telling you. I mean, I was in people's
I
houses.
agree with that.
Well, I mean,
I agree with that. But
You either work with
we-
delusional people or you don't.
yeah, you just.
no,
a
not
binary
not
decision.
every quote environmentalist is delusional. There's people that
But
want to
the-
have a sustainable life, want to have.
And that's what we're gonna bank on. That, you know,
Yeah.
that somebody will say, "Wow, this is a sustainable product." You know,
Yeah.
great, and it is carbon negative. You know, and because that's the buzzword. And you know, we right now we are adversarial to that, and if we see what adversarial gets us, and I mean I totally agree with your premise. I really do. It's just that it just doesn't get us anywhere, and I mean we have to have a price that these guys can, you know, go out and trap. And if we don't have that, you know, the business is over.
I agree with that too.
So.
Yep.
Anybody else?
Speaking of the price, is it worth it for a small-time trapper to wait until coon is primed to start rather than when the season opens?
Well, I mean, where are you from?
South of here, a couple hours.
Yeah, you're gonna have to a little bit. Yeah. I mean, if you're up where I'm from, you know, unless you're really trapping in the water and you hammered your biggest day is your first day, you catch a white leather coon. But when you start getting down here, what is your season opening date?
10th.
And we're the 5th, right?
No, it's all the
Oh,
same.
it's all the 10th.
It's all
Yeah.
the same,
Oh yeah,
yeah.
you're gonna have to wait. Yeah.
Thanksgiving?
Maybe you don't have to worry. I mean, you know, just don't put your whole line out. Just start. You know, when you think it's kind of close, you know, because what you don't want to do is, you know, you don't want to trap too late. You know, that's even worse. And you know, that kind of depends on the year. They all become kind of primed at the same time. So you know, all of a sudden, boom, you start getting white leather coon, and you want to kill that coon, you know, when it's got white leather.
How about tie-ins? When did you start on them?
You know, that's a really good question because, you know, when you go to these demos at these conventions, you know, a lot of guys do dirt hole sets for their convention. Well, that's a set that's very difficult after you get bad weather. You know, any coyotes or most coyotes are going to have some value, and I hate to tell a guy, hey, wait till Thanksgiving and it's a semi-heavy coyote, and then, you know, it's freezing and it's rain and, you know, they can't trap. So I guess I would suggest, you know, try like the 10th or something, you know, depending, you know, how far north you are, something like that. But, you know, you're going to risk getting some, you know, flat coyotes, and obviously it's very difficult to trim with a flat coyote. But you got to catch a coyote too to have some value. You got to have some fun. So I just don't want you waiting too long, and then you can't trap. Okay.
Are you running to Southeast Iowa the opening week of the season?
I think we actually do not have our routes completely done. We're 90% done. Some of this stuff with NAFA, we've added some routes and stops because of it. We really don't know what's going on with that. But we will be going, I can't totally answer that yet. We'll be going in November, that's all I can tell you, okay? Any other questions? This is your chance, guys.
Well, if nobody else has got any questions, I'd like to thank Guy Grunwald for coming and giving this. It's always, to me, it's always kind of the jumping off point of the season to listen to this talk. So, thank you very much.
All right, thanks a lot, guys.